Hey now, good morning, happy Thursday, PAs, W staff, clients, friends joining us. Gosh, we've been off. We had Monday and Tuesday off, so that was okay. So no assignment this week, of course. But what I'd like to do is that when we have our two classes, I like to revisit a movie that we looked at and see your results for Friday. So of course there's no assignment today, but we're going to relook at one of the most famous movies, one of something we did years ago, and I thought it would be fun since it's summertime to get right back into it. So let's take a look at revisiting Jaws, and then we'll see your results from a few years ago. So let's get right back into Jaws. Now, I said I was hesitant because everybody knows that theme, even if you're not a student or a composer or if you're a kid, you know that theme. Even if you've never seen the movie, you know this theme. Anyone can play it on the piano. It's just two notes, right? So it's not particularly that interesting to rescore something that works so well. But then I thought, and hear me out, what if we take away the shark and the blood and the gore, and we just show a scene of in the water? If we take out those elements, where, and I did do some internal cutting, but all respect to the filmmakers, would we still get an effect? Would we still get something scary? Would we still get it? So we're gonna look at a scene, but at the end, of course, as you know that I like to do, we need to know what we're doing. We can't just do the assignment. We need to know what movie we're looking at, where it came from, all of these things. So we're going to talk about historically the context of what's going on in the world. We're going to talk about the background of the movie. Then we're going to talk about John Williams' score. Then we'll talk about your assignment. So, not even a question. We're going to have way too much fun today. But let's simmer down. We'll try to contain it. So, welcome to the Film Scoring Mondays of today's movie, Jaws. So if you remember, Ben-Hur was shot in Italy, right? Now I want to show you. Now we're going to go to Martha's Vineyard. So from Italy to Martha's Vineyard, why are we going there? Well, that's where they shot Jaws, the movie. So, and that's one of the interesting things about the movie, where most studio films like to shoot at studios, the backlots, because they have complete control over sound and everything going around. But Spielberg wanted to shoot this, which is way more difficult, on location. And so they picked Martha's Vineyard because it was just this small, sleepy town. And it was until Jaws came out, and it's been tourist season ever since. So Jaws is important because it's the first blockbuster. So we know the term blockbuster today. There's a new blockbuster with The Rock that comes out every week now. But back then there weren't blockbusters. So you would just go to the cinema and see different movies, a foreign film here, a comedy here. Well, Jaws screws that whole formula up and becomes this massive blockbuster hit in the summer. It was supposed to be out in winter of 74, but they were delayed, so it had to be summer of 75, which is usually the slowest time for movies. But in this sense, it worked beautifully for them because everybody that summer was going to see this movie, this blockbuster movie. So we know that term blockbuster, but before Jaws, that term was not, I don't even know who coined it, but that was not as popular. So that's really why it's such an important movie. So let's think about what's going on in the world in 1975. The Vietnam War ends. So after this long process and protests, all of these things going on, finally we're out of this ridiculous war, right? Okay, what else is going on? Bill Gates founds Microsoft in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So he's starting to get his ideas going. And then later on in 75, Saturday Night Live premieres for the first time with host George Carlin. So if we think of that, okay, entertainment-wise, one of the longest running comedy show of all time still is running. SNL starts. That's huge. SNL breaks barriers. As we all know, some of the most funniest things in history have been on that show. Then we think of the war ending, huge. People coming back from war, lives being destroyed, lives being ruined, families being rejuvenated, all of these things happening. And then Bill Gates, technology is all of a sudden, and, you know, people probably thought Bill Gates was crazy for doing this thing called Microsoft. You know, it would take 20 more years at least until maybe 25 years until people actually knew what Microsoft, you know, the common person knew what a computer was. So these things, again, are happening. And then in 75, we get the first what? Blockbuster, right? Okay, so that's what's going on in the world. Okay, so let's do a little bit of background on the movie. As I said, Spielberg picked Martha's Vineyard as this great location. So it's based on Peter Benchley's novel Jaws. And if you think of it, it's kind of funny that it's such like a visual movie of being in the water and the ocean and the shark. It's kind of interesting to think, well, how could a book be that interesting if you don't see any pictures or anything like that? But remember, the imagination is sometimes the most important thing, because we come up with things in our head that are so dark and disturbing sometimes. We almost make we make it more scary than it is. Whereas when you see something, you're like, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought. But that's because our minds and our imagination are so powerful, right? And in essence, really, Peter Benchley did what Herman Melville did with Moby Dick. I mean, in the sense of using a novel to really show something very scary, but of course it's all in our imagination. So then they hire this kid. Spielberg's 27 when he directs this. So, and this could really make or break his career. He's only done one feature before that, and you know, he had a tremendous amount of pressure. Spielberg does an interesting camera technique. He uses something that usually indie films use, even today. Not a blockbuster, but he uses the handheld camera effect. So the DP is holding the camera. And if we think of it, it works so effectively well because you get that shot of when you're either below water or underwater. You're like this. It's the point of view of the swimmer, of the person floating in the water. And when you think of that angle, it's very terrifying. You could either drown or you can get up for breath. So that's a really cool camera technique that he's using to put us in the moment right there. Another thing that Spielberg and the writers and producers do is that they're focusing more on the story rather than special effects. You know, this is before Star Wars, before movies that had tons of action. I mean, you think of Jaws being an action movie, and it is, but you're not seeing the shark that much. You're very rarely seeing the shark. It's really about the story of these three guys on this boat trying to go after the shark, about the town being in trouble. That's the story, much like Hitchcock did with suspense. He's building suspense. You're not seeing anything necessarily violent, but you know there might be violence coming. There might be something uncomfortable coming. You just don't know when and if it's going to come at all. And if we want to take a further step back, we see that Jaws is, when we think of it, the villain's not really the shark. Who's the villain? The villain is the mayor that decides to keep Amity, the little village, beach village, open. He's the villain in this. He's the one that says, "Don't worry about it. I won't make any political statement right now, but he says it's safe to go out there. It's fine. We need this town open for the economy. We need people. We need tourists. This is how we survive. So if we, just think of it as a capitalist ideology. Okay, it's kind of an interesting way to think about it. Okay, so we're talking about the background of it, and let's talk about the music. John Williams, obviously, everyone knows today. Nobody knew him before 1975. He was this composer getting training, and this is the first collaboration with Spielberg. And if we think of John Williams' score, let's just think for a second. This was very interesting score because, and not just because it's catchy and has the shark theme so well with the cellos and the tuba, but movies before this, prior to this, in the 70s, because we're talking about 1975, the mid-70s, most of the huge iconic films used songs. So if we think of Love Story, okay, 1970 Love Story, Andy Williams is the singer in that, and doesn't really have a score. So, and then the next year, Shaft, Isaac Hayes composed and has this funk soundtrack, right? So again, more songs. 1973, American Graffiti. Well, American Graffiti is filled with songs from the 50s. It's all about, teenagers the last night before they go off to college, and it's the radio is on. Mean Streets that same year, 1973. It has, popular songs from the 60s, the Ronettes, the Rolling Stones. Tommy, the rock opera by The Who, that's all pop songs, and that's 1975. Well, what John Williams does in 1975 is he brings the orchestra back into scoring the film from the first frame to the last frame. So, and that was kind of something that all composers did after World War II, in particular, of filming the whole movie and using the whole orchestra. We talked about Miklos Rozsa's score in Ben-Hur and how he had that huge, 80-piece orchestra or something. So Williams is doing that, which is kind of unorthodox right there. But what John Williams does is that he almost creates this pop song. This theme in Jaws is such a catchy it's an easy theme, and it's almost a pop tune, although using the orchestra. And when John Williams played it for the first time for Spielberg laughed and thought it was a joke. He didn't think that this was literally, like, he was being serious with the score until he said, okay, yeah, this works for sure. And he said that he owes half the success of Jaws to John Williams' score. And it's this two-note ostinato, right? So it's going back and forth. That's a musical motif. It's hypnotizing. It paralyzes you. We know that when we hear that, the shark is coming, and he uses the score in a way where you don't know when the music's going to come, just like you don't know when the shark's going to come. But when you hear both of them together, you know something bad is coming. So we talked about suspense in Hitchcock. Remember when we looked at Bernard Herrmann, the great classical composer, we looked at his score to Psycho, and we looked at that scene with Janet Leigh's character in the car and how she's just driving, and still it's terrifying with those strings chomping away. And then when we took that music, was it still scary? I think I don't know. When you think of your friend, hey, you got to come and see this movie, it's so scary, the friend could be like, well, I mean, it's just a lady driving. So we all know that music can, enhance and make or break certain scenes. So let's talk about The Assignment.
Hooper, hurry it up now, tie it on. Hurry it up, he's coming straight for us. Don't screw it up now.
Don't wait for me.
Come on, Hooper, come on, hurry it up, tie it on.
Now.
Kill it, Quint, kill it. Now! Shoot! Time! What were you doing? You knew I had to get a clean shot right in the head. All right, let's see how long that barrel takes to bring him up. Lean on the barrel! I'm coming around again!
Is that still scary or not? I don't know. We're going to talk about, and I'll post this later so we can watch it, of course. We're going to talk about if this is still scary or not. Again, there's nothing really particularly scary, but maybe we can make it. And you don't have to make it scary. You can make it whatever you want. But let's talk about water. Is water something scary? I don't know. My sister's terrified of water. She can't go underwater. She can't even watch Jaws, and it's not probably too uncommon. I mean, I don't want to go to those underwater hotels. That would terrify me. But I don't know if Jaws made people. Well, I know it made people scared of the water. There's just like the scene in Psycho made people scared of the shower. Is water scary? I don't know. Esther Williams. I mean, she was the synchronized swimmer. She had a whole career of making the water look beautiful and gorgeous and fabulous in a way. So that's not really scary, but somehow that's if you take away the glitz and the glamour and the Hollywood score and the beauty of Esther Williams, you just are stuck in the ocean by yourself. Yeah, that's scary. So I'm very excited to see what we come up with. This was very good work we did. Jaws, a really important, iconic movie, blockbuster movie. I watch it usually every summer. It's just fun. It's it's rated PG, but it's terrifying. It shows you don't need to show scary stuff or horrible, gory stuff to get a reaction out of people. Sometimes the subtlety is very important with stories. So what an amazing movie. First blockbuster, right? 1975, the first summer blockbuster. This is when movies changed. They had the new Hollywood, and then it went into blockbuster movies, and it was more about the story rather than the special effects, right? So I'm just reviewing kind of things that we looked at, and the John Williams score is just amazing. So we're going to see what you guys came up with tomorrow. Yeah, and then that's going to be super fun too. So have a great rest of the day. Hope you enjoyed that. We'll see your results that you did a few years ago. And that's that. So see you tomorrow. Bye.